Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank y'all for joining me again tonight as we do today's daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditation. This will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning that this will be the first time that I hear it or read it right here on this podcast with y'all, so you'll get my genuine response, reactions, and observations. I'm interested to see where we go from yesterday. And yesterday was talking about, I just had to be reminded a little bit, honestly, that we were discussing doing what was right. Now that was above all else, and that life is based on that unfailable law that doing the right thing is above everything, and that we really do get what we put out. We get the results of our actions and our thoughts in all ways. So it gives us it's a prompt to really look at ourselves and our situation and our circumstances and reflect back at where we had a part to play in these things and what what led us to right where we are. So let's go ahead and get to today's. This is December 20th reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. Talent, genius, goodness, greatness are the result of a long train of causes and effects. The process of growth is seen in the flower, but though not seen in the mental growth, it is nevertheless there. I said the process of mental growth was not seen, but this is only true in a general sense. The true thinker and sage does see, with his spiritual eye, the process of spiritual growth, just as the natural scientist has made himself acquainted with the natural causes and effects, so the sage has made himself familiar with spiritual causes and effects. He sees the process by which characters, like plants, come into being. And when he sees the flowers of genius and virtue appear, he knows from what mental seeds they sprang, and how they gradually came to perfection through long periods of silent growth. Nothing appears ready made. There is ever a changing, a growing, a becoming. Whew. Well, that one's fantastic. I love the ones that talk about the process. I love those that give us a little bit of encouragement that we're on the right path, that we just might not see how well we're actually doing, the progress we've made, right? A lot of these things have to be observed. At least that was my experience. A lot of people had to tell me I was doing better because I couldn't recognize it in the moments. I just couldn't see it. I was still stuck in my head too much. I was filled with self pity. So let's go through this one again. Talent, genius, goodness, greatness are the result of a long train of causes and effects. So these are not just born overnight, these are qualities obtained through rigorous and persistent action. These are things that develop over time. During this purifying process and or refinement process, you might want to call it. You're chipping away and getting rid of the dead wood, practicing these things, practicing living righteously until you start to embody the qualities that it's talking about. It's possible. It just takes work. That's the amazing thing. It just takes work. So, the process of growth is seen in the flower, but though not seen in the mental growth, it is nevertheless there. So, pretty simple comparison we're making here. You can see the stages of growth for a flower. You can see how it progresses from a seed being planted into a plant, into a bud, into a blooming flower, into seedlings again. So you can see that process physically play out. You can see it with people growing up, with kids and things of that nature too. But the mental growth, the spiritual growth, those they aren't as easy to necessarily spot. We don't notice them like we notice the physical changes. At least not everyone. I do have to say I can see progress a lot of the times now, which I'm grateful for. I said the process of mental growth was not seen, but this is only true in a general sense. So it's like your physical body's not necessarily changing right away with mental growth. You don't immediately see a physical manifestation of the mental change. I mean, uh, that would be obvious to the person, right? So he says, but this is only true in a general sense. So it's only true to those that don't know what to look for, I think, and it's only true to those that haven't experienced it. The true thinker and sage does see with his spiritual eye the process of spiritual growth. When you're with somebody and become familiar with somebody and you know how they act and you know how that manifests and you know what their motives are eventually after conversation, excuse me, got struck with a yawn there, after conversation and investigation and observation, right? Like you start to see their patterns. So when someone changes those things in an attempt to grow spiritually, we might notice the obvious change. And it might be someone goes through the same situation that they were in previously. And previously, they got angry as soon as the situation occurred. In their current experience with that situation, though, it may have only they may have been calm for the first 2 minutes of the argument, first 2 minutes of the interaction. It's recognizing the effort. It's recognizing the momentum of the change that's happening. That means the thinking is changed. The behavior is being addressed. These things are important to recognize, right? But they're just sometimes minute, especially in the beginning. Someone in the 12-step program brought up a topic of spiritual awakening experiences. And I was thinking about it, and how do you know? I believe one of the biggest indicators that something had changed was a genuine sense of laughter and camaraderie and joy in a moment. Because I couldn't do that before. I had no genuine happiness. I forgot what my real laugh sounded like. It was all forced laughter at a joke that I knew was supposed to be funny, and I could foresee the punchline, right? Or forced laugh at a terrible joke because I wanted them to like me. I wanted to get something out of them. So one of the biggest signs for me was smiling and just laughing genuinely. I didn't know it at the time, honestly, but people pointed it out to me. People made me aware of a change that had occurred in me. It was revelation when I started to notice those things on my own, for sure. Just as the natural scientist has made himself acquainted with natural causes and effects, so the sage has made himself familiar with spiritual causes and effects. So, we've, as you live this life, as you refine yourself, you purify yourself, you go through this close in it, this aligning. I was going to say closening, but that's not a word I don't, I believe. But the aligning with this power, this source, this energy, we see what those differences are. We're trained for it at that point. When you've been living this way, you've had the experience of it yourself to fall back on and to draw from and to see through. We've been acquainted with it, as it says. He sees the process by which the characters, like plants, come into being. And when he sees the flowers of genius and virtue appear, he knows from what mental seeds they sprang, and how they gradually came to perfection through long periods of silent growth. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, in other words, before these things truly manifest. But you can start them today. That's the thing. Like, one of the hardest things to do is know that there's a lot of work in between where you are and where you want to get to. That's why people give up so easily. Well, I'll never change. I'll never do that. It's not that bad. Blah blah blah. This, that, the third. So many excuses. Just so many excuses as to why they're not going to stick it out. As to why they finally have resigned themselves to a life of mediocrity. It's pretty sad at the end of the day. But when when we can see these things pop up in a person, these virtues, we know the work that went into that. Behaviors that had to be willfully stopped so you could see the thoughts, then the thoughts that had to be changed so you could see the intention, and the heart that had to change so you could have those changes to be permanent. That process, especially the first time through it, mm, there's a lot to digest about yourself in that process. But after you start doing it more and more and more, and you become more and more refined, more and more purified, more and more aligned, these virtues can appear most times without your notice. It's kind of the cool part about it. Now, this last line here, that's probably the most encouraging part of it, actually. Reading today, nothing appears ready made. There is ever changing, growing, and becoming. It's always growth. It's always development. They were just simple to get by one minuscule change, then everyone would get these characteristics. But no, the amount of sacrifice it takes of your own personal ego to allow these things to manifest from doing the right things is massive. It's a huge ask for someone that's never even considered doing that before. But it's the simpler thing to do. It's not easy, but it is simple. So, all right. Well, there we go. I really resonated and enjoyed this reading today. I hope you all did too. And just trust the process. Trust the process. That's what I had to do. I promise you, it will not let you down. So, but thank you all for joining me again this evening. As always, greatly appreciate it. And I will be looking forward till tomorrow. So, until next time, thanks.